The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 2, The Black Cauldron. Chapter 7, Caw. Taran stopped short. "You know that?" he asked in surprise. "Then why didn't you?" Gweistel gulped and darted nervous glances around him.
"Bro, I know, but only in a very general way, you understand. But I mean, I don't really know anything at all. Just the usual unfounded rumor you might expect to hear in a beastly place like this. But of no importance, pay no attention to it."
"Gweistel," said Dolly sharply, "you know more about this than you let on. Now, out with it."
The gloomy creature flung his hands to his head and began moaning and rocking back and forth.
"Bro, do go away and leave me alone," he sobbed. "But I'm not well. I have so many tasks to finish. I shall never be caught up."
"You must tell us," cried Taran. "Please," he added, lowering his voice, for the wretched Gweisel had begun to shake violently, his eyes turning up as though he were about to have a fit. "Do not keep your knowledge from us. If you stay silent, our lives are risked for no purpose."
Bro, leave it alone,"
Gweisel choked, fanning himself with an edge of his robe.
"Don't bother with it. Forget it. That's the best thing you can do. Go back wherever you came from. Don't even think about it."
"How can we do that?" Taran cried. "Arin won't rest until he has the cauldron again."
"But of course he won't rest,"
Gweisel said.
"He isn't resting now. But that's exactly why you should drop the search and go quietly. We'll only stir up more trouble, and there's enough of that already."
Then we'd better get back to Kirkadarn and join Gwydion as quickly as we can," Eilonwy answered.
But yes, by all means,"
broke in Gweisel with the first trace of eagerness Taran had glimpsed in this strange individual.
"But I'll only give you this advice for your own good. But I'm glad, very glad you've seen fit to follow it. But now, of course," he added almost brightly, "we'll want to be on your way. Very wise of you. I unhappily have to stay here. But I envy you. I really do. But that's the way of it, and there's little anyone can do. A pleasure meeting you all. Goodbye."
"Goodbye," cried Eilonwy. "If we put our noses above ground, the huntsmen are waiting for us. Yes, it will be goodbye indeed. Dolly says it's your duty to help us, and with that you haven't done a thing, except sigh and moan. Is this the best the fair folk can manage? Why, I'd rather be up a tree with my toes tied together." Gweisel clutched his head again.
"Oh, please don't shout. But I'm not up to shouting today, not after the horses. But one of you can go and see if the huntsmen are still there. Not that it will really do any good, for they might have just stepped away for a moment."
"I wonder who'll do that," muttered the dwarf. "Good old Dolly, of course. I thought I'd be done with making myself invisible."
"But I could give you all of you a little something," Gweisel went on. "But not that it will do much good. It's a kind of powder I put by in case of need, but I was saving it for emergencies."
"What do you call this, you clop?"
Dolly growled.
"But yes, well, I meant more for personal emergencies,"
Gweisel explained, paling.
"But it doesn't matter about me. You can have it. Take it, all of it. Go ahead. You put it on your feet or whatever you walk on. But I mean hooves and so forth,"
Gweisel added.
"But it doesn't work too well. Hardly much sense in bothering, because it wears off. Naturally, if you're walking on it, it would do that. However, it will hide your tracks for a while."
"That's what we need," said Taran. "Once we throw the huntsmen off our trail, I think we can outrun them."
"But I'll get some,"
Gweisel said with eagerness.
"But it won't take a moment."
As he made to leave the chamber, however, Dolly took him by the arm.
"Gweistel," said the dwarf severely, "you have a skulking, sneaking look in your eyes. You might hoodwink my friends, but don't forget you're also dealing with one of the fair folk. I have a feeling," Dolly added, tightening his grip, "you're far too anxious to see us gone. I'm beginning to wonder if I squeezed you a little, what more might come out."
At this, Gweisel rolled up his eyes and fainted away. The dwarf had to haul him upright while Taran and the others fanned him. At length, Gweistel opened one eye.
Sorry, he gasped. Not myself today. Too bad about the cauldron. One of those unfortunate things.
The crow, who had been watching all this activity, turned a beady glance on his owner and flapped his wings with such vigor that Gurgi roused himself in alarm.
"Ordu!"
Caw croaked. Fluider turned in surprise.
Well, can you imagine that? He didn't say caw at all. At least it didn't seem that way to me. I could have sworn he said something like or do.
Orwin!
Croaked Caw.
Orgok!
There,
Said Fluider, looking at the bird with fascination.
he did it again.
It's strange, agreed Taran. It sounded like Ordu Orwin Orgok. And look at him, running back and forth on his perch. Do you think we've upset him? He acts as if he wants to tell us something, began Eilonwe. Gweistel's face, meanwhile, had turned the color of ancient cheese.
You may not want us to know,
Said Dolly, roughly seizing the terrified Gweistel.
but he does. This time, Gweistel, I really mean to squeeze you.
No, Dolly, please don't do that.
Wailed Gweistel.
Bro, don't give him another thought. He does odd things. I've tried to teach him better habits, but it doesn't do any good.
A flood of Gweistel's pleading and moaning followed, but the dwarf paid it no heed, and he began to carry out his threat.
No, squealed Gweistel. No squeezing, not today. Listen to me, Dolly.
He added, his eyes crossing and uncrossing frantically.
Brave, I tell you, will you promise to go away?
Dolly nodded and relaxed his grip.
All Ka meant to say,
Gweistel went on hurriedly.
is that the cauldron is in the hands of Ordu, Orwin, and Orgok. That's all. It's a shame, but there's certainly nothing to be done about it. But it hardly seems worth mentioning.
Who are Ordu, Orwin, and Orgok? Taran asked. His excitement and impatience were getting the better of him, too, and he was sorely tempted to aid Dolly in squeezing Gweistel.
Who are they?
Murmured Gweistel.
You had better ask, what are they?
Very well, cried Taran. What are they?
I don't know,
replied Gweistel.
It's hard to say, but it doesn't matter. They've got the cauldron, and you might as well let it rest there.
He shuddered violently.
Don't meddle with them. There's no earthly use in it.
Whoever they are, or whatever they are, cried Taran, turning to the rest of the company. I say find them and take the cauldron. That's what we set out to do, and we should not turn back now. Where do they live? He asked Gweistel.
Live?
Asked Gweistel with a frown.
They don't live. Well, not exactly, but it's all very vague. I really don't know.
Ka flapped his wings again.
Marva!
He croaked.
I mean,
Gweistel moaned as the angry Dolly reached for him again.
They say in the marshes of Morva. But exactly where, I have no idea. No idea at all. But that's the trouble. You'll never find them. And if you do, which you won't, you'll wish you never had.
Gweistel wrung his bony hands, and his trembling features indeed held a look of deepest dread. I have heard of the marshes of Morva, Hadeon said. They lie to the west of here. How far, I do not know.
I do,
interrupted Fluider.
A good day's journey, I should say. I once came upon them during my wanderings. I recall them quite clearly. Unpleasant stench of country and quite terrifying. Not that it bothered me, of course. Undaunted, I strode through.
A harp string snapped abruptly with a resounding twang.
I went around them.
The bard corrected himself hurriedly.
Dreadful, smelly, ugly-looking fens they were. But,
he added,
if that's where the cauldron is, then I say with Taran, go there. A flam never hesitates.
A flam never hesitates to open his mouth,
put in Dolly.
Gweistel is telling the truth for once. I'm sure of it. I've heard tales back in Idaleg's realm of those, whatever you call them. And they weren't pleasant. Nobody knows much about them. Or if they do, they aren't telling.
You should pay attention to Dolly, interrupted Eilonwe, turning impatiently to Taran. I don't see how you can even think about getting the cauldron away from whoever has it, and not even knowing whatever has it. Besides, Eilonwe went on, Gwydion ordered us to meet him at Caer-Codron, and if my memory hasn't got holes in it from all the nonsense I've been hearing, he didn't say a word about going off in the opposite direction. Now, you don't understand, Taran retorted. When he told us to meet him, he was going to plan a new search. He didn't know we would find the cauldron. In the first place, Eilonwy said, you haven't found the cauldron.
But we know where it is, cried Fflewddur. That's just as good.
And in the second place, Eilonwy continued, ignoring the bard, if you've got any news about it, the only wise thing is to find Gwydion and tell him what you know.
That's sense, put in Dolly. We'll have enough trouble getting to Caer-Codron without splashing around in swamps or a wild goose chase. You listen to her. She's the only one outside of myself who has any notion of what ought to be done.
Taran hesitated. It may be, he said after a pause, that we would be wiser returning to Gwydion. King Morgant and his warriors can lend us their strength. He spoke these words with some effort. In the back of his mind, he yearned to find the cauldron, to bring it in triumph to Gwydion. Nevertheless, he could not deny to himself that Eilonwy and Dolly had proposed the surer plan. It seems to me then, he began, but he had no sooner started to agree with Dolly than Ellidyr thrust his way to the fireside. Pig boy, Ellidyr said, you have chosen well. Return with your friends and let us make our parting here. Parting? Asked Taran, puzzled. Do you think I would turn my back now when the prize is nearly won? Ellidyr asked coldly. Go your way, pig boy, and I shall go mine, to the marshes of Morva themselves. Wait for me in Caer-Codron, Ellidyr added with a scornful smile. Warm your courage beside the fire. Now I shall bring the cauldron there. Taran's eyes flashed with anger at Ellidyr's words. The thought that Ellidyr should find the cauldron was more than he could bear. I shall warm my courage, son of Penlucia, he cried, at whatever fire you choose. Go back, the rest of you, if that's what you want. I was a fool to listen to the thoughts of a girl. Eilonwy gave a furious shriek. Dolly raised a hand in protest, but Taran cut him short. He was calmer now that his first anger had passed. This is not a game of courage, he said. I would be twice a fool, and so should we all, to be goaded by an idle taunt. This much at least I have learned from Gwydion. But there is also this. Aran seeks the cauldron even now. We do not dare lose the time it would take to bring help. If he finds the cauldron before we do...
And if he doesn't, put in Dolly, how do you know he knows where it is? And if he doesn't know, how long will it take him to find out? A merry while, I'll be bound, even with all his cauldron-born and huntsmen and Gwythanes. And what have you? There's a risk either way. Any clodpole can see that. But if you ask me, there's more risk than otherwise if you go popping off into the marshes of Morva.
And you, Taran of Caer-Dallben, said Eilonwy, you're only making excuses for some harebrained idea of your own. You've been talking and talking, and you've forgotten one thing. You're not the one to decide anything. And neither are you, Ellidyr. Adaon commands you both, if I'm not mistaken. Taran flushed at Eilonwy's reminder. Forgive me, Adaon, he said, bowing his head. I did not intend to disobey your orders. The choice is yours. Adaon, who had been listening silently near the fire, shook his head. No, he said quietly, this choice cannot be mine. I have said nothing for or against your plan. The decision is greater than I dare make. But why? Cried Taran. I don't understand, he said quickly and with concern. Of all of us, you know best what to do. Taran turned his gray eyes toward the fire. Perhaps you will understand one day. For now, choose your path, Taran of Caer-Dallben, he said. Wherever it may lead, I promise you my help. Taran drew back and stood silent a moment, filled with distress and uneasiness. It was not fear touching his heart, but the wordless sorrow of dry leaves rushing desolate before the wind. Adaon continued to watch the dance of the flames. I shall go to the marshes of Morva, Taran said. Adaon nodded. So it shall be. No one spoke then. Even Ellidyr made no reply. He bit his lips and fingered the hilt of his sword. Well, said Dolly at last, I suppose I might as well go along too. Do what I can. But it's a mistake, I warn you.
Mistake? Cried the jubilant bard. By no means. I wouldn't be kept away from it.
And I certainly won't, declared Eilonwy. Someone has to make sure that at least a few of us with good sense are along. Marshes, ugh! If you insist on making fools of yourselves, I wish you'd pick a drier way.
And Gurgi will help,
shouted Gurgi, springing to his feet.
Yes, yes, we're seekins and pickins.
Gwaisto,
said Dolly with a look of resignation.
you might as well go and fetch that powder you were talking about.
While Gwystal eagerly rummaged through the alcove, the dwarf drew a deep breath and flickered out of sight. He was back after some length of time, fully visible and looking furious, his ears trembling and rimmed with blue.
There's 5 huntsmen camped over the rise, he said. They've settled down for the, oh, my ears, night. If that powder is any good, we can be well away before they even know we've been here.
The companions dusted their feet and the hooves of their steeds with a black substance Gwystal distributed from a moldering sack. He seemed almost gleeful as Tarn untethered Melendless and led the horse from behind the screen of brambles.
Goodbye, goodbye,
muttered Gwystal.
But I hate to see you waste your time, not to mention your lives. But that's the way of it, I suppose. Here today, gone tomorrow, and what's anyone to do about it? Goodbye, I hope we meet again, but not soon. Goodbye!
With that, he shut the portal. Tarn took a firmer grip on the bridle of Melendless, and the companions moved silently into the forest.